Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks again for joining us for another episode of Behind the Scenes. Chris Jericho here, Chief Operating Officer of Vergex. I'm joined by one of the most interesting men in the industry, the president of MicroCorp. I've known him for a long time. I'm extremely excited by this discussion. Hopefully, we will learn a lot about him. If you hear an accent, he is not from Texas. We will learn more about him in a second. But Phil, thanks for joining. Tell us a little bit about you, who you are, MicroCorp, and then I've got a lot of questions for you.
Man, how long have you got? I'm fairly new to this industry compared to most of you guys. I joined MicroCorp 7 years ago. And prior to that, I sort of came from the dark side, but not the provider side. I actually came from the hardware side, mostly in the UCaaS business. Right. So my most recent career up to that point was working for companies like Polycom, for Mitel, Nortel, or Norhel, as they sort of said back in the day. And then prior to that, I sort of cut my spurs carrying a bag, was selling vacuum cleaners after graduating with a mining geology degree. That's where I really learned to sell. I mean, that's where the fundamentals are. Then had a good stint at EMC when they were a tiny company. I actually have one share on my wall worth $1 at the time, which I think is worth like $2,700 now. I mean, that's the biggest multiple.
Wow.
So I've been around the block a little bit, run worldwide sales jobs, and I'd never really been involved in the agent business until I joined MicroCorp, and it's a very different channel. But that's mostly about me.
Well, what people may not know this is when you first joined MicroCorp, I was at a company, Altiva, and we had just brought MicroCorp into our portfolio and vice versa, joining it. And I remember they said, hey, they've got a new president. He comes from these big branded companies. He loves presentations, but he wants it less words, keep it clean. And I was part of the team that created that presentation. And I just remember cutting out as much as possible to keep a nice, effective presentation for you. So that always stuck with me. I don't know if I ever told you that, but that was the guidance I was given. And that's
so
where this
funny.
Relationship started.
That is so funny. That's a fallout from sitting through Polycom QBRs, which were 4 days long, 10 hours a day. Wow. So that was a reaction against death by PowerPoint.
Well, listen, I will never forget it. It was earlier in my career, and now I keep it nice and clean, and less is more, especially when we're trying to discuss with the audience. But so it's interesting. You have the sales background, okay? You've got the on-prem type technologies, obviously, with Polycom and where that's transitioned and where they are today. And then you're in the unified communication space, and now you lead one of the premier master agencies. How have you taken that sales mindset and that sales background and then into product and then ultimately running a master agency? How does that all come together?
Well, I think there's a number of facets to running really what is a good channel. But one of the things I think has happened in the agent channel, the master agency business, since I've been here is it's grown up a lot. It really was a little bit like the Wild West when I first got here with regards to contracts and tiered accounts and volumes, et cetera. And bringing some of that more traditional channel structure to the agency world is what we've really tried to do in MicroCorp. And by the way, the industry has been doing that in parallel. So that experience has sort of served me or us well. But I think more importantly is a fundamental belief in what I call the frictionless partner experience. And that's not something that you create overnight. And particularly in our world, it's less about what the products do because there's table stakes about what a solution does. I mean, there's nuances between them, et cetera. But at the end of the day, what is that partner's experience with that provider? And what role does MicroCorp play in that whole value stream? Because we're in the middle.
Right.
In many ways, we're like a dating agency where we've got providers on the left-hand side and we're trying to build relationships with partners on the right-hand side. Well, how do you do that? Well, you build a platform which in today's world is much more automated.
Yeah.
And so we're able to provide a great experience of that partners have with providers on the left-hand side by running interference in the middle. And what do I mean by that? Well, it's things like, in the simplest case, of the 100-odd providers we have on our line card, they all have different commission formats, different ways of doing commissions. Well, we normalize that.
Right.
So our partners have a single view of it. Same thing with marketing collateral and sales collateral. Well, we normalize that in our marketplace, EcoHero, so our partners can consume that easily. So, it's really lots of experience of understanding how partners want to work with providers and manufacturers and bringing that together in a new way of interacting. And it's my heartfelt belief that the experience that we have in our personal lives is the experience we expect to have in our enterprise or work. It's not the other way around, typically, because that doesn't really work.
Yeah.
When you come home and start putting your kids on MBOs, et cetera, it's not really the way it should be done with quarterly reviews. It doesn't really work that way, although it would be great. But the other way around, it absolutely does. When you go online, you want answers now. You don't want to wait. You want to do your self-research. You want tools to be able to get to an endpoint on your own. So there's self-service tools. But then really importantly, when you want help, you want to push a button, say, I need help. I need people. I've taken this as far as I can.
Yep.
Anybody who's actually tried to measure their own roller shades knows exactly what I mean. Do I measure inside the window, outside the window, the length of the window, et cetera, et cetera? At some point you go, oh my God, I can't figure this out. I need help. And that's when you push the help button. So we're trying to develop that experience, which is both this online platform and people when you need them. So not a short answer, but there you go.
The one I was going to mention a couple of things that, and I always look at myself as also someone on the sidelines, and I try to observe what's going on. And when I think about where I started with a MicroCorp relationship, and I use relationship very, very focused when I speak with you on that, and I'll explain why in a second. And then I see where we are today and the value that we've created and the strategy that you've taken with us, meaning Vergex, and kind of that over the top play. And, there was a reason of why we did a couple things. But one thing that I've always observed is that you guys are very relationship oriented, and that drives, just through and through the experience. And that comes from partners that you've had for 20 something years that still attend the one-on-ones, and, the way that Karen interacts, and yourself and Cindy and, and everybody else that's out there, relationship is a core kind of, block in the culture of MicroCorp. But, one thing I noticed, and this is a while back, is that a lot of the master agencies, it was a lot of balloons and t-shirts, and it was trying to get the audience and that engagement with the sub agent. And then ultimately, how did the vendor then get the mind share? And years ago, and this is when you started coming on board, I noticed that you took that whole subject matter expert really serious. And that was something that years ago, and now I know a lot of the master agencies, they come in there with the technical acumen and let's help you guys sell. But I know years ago, I saw you take that approach where you brought in more specific talent to help on the engineering aspect of it and that subject matter expert, and didn't really focus necessarily on, the marketing side of it, and really looked at it from the technology side and said, well, if I have the right technologist, I'm going to go drive value with my sub agent, because how do you win business? How do you maintain relationships? Well, you got to deliver on what you said. And I just wanted to, mention that I have noticed that earlier on. And I know that a lot of the master agents have focused on, sales engineers and that type of stuff. But years ago, you took a stance and you brought in more of that technical acumen. You've done it with your, SD-WAN evangelist. I've seen that with Chris Donlin and other folks that you have there. And my question is, I believe that was a conscious effort that you did do that. And I've noticed it. So I'm interested in that. And my second question outside of that is, now at, MicroCorp, it kind of points back to what I just mentioned, which is, there's the marketing aspect and the getting the mind share. And then there's the, how do we build that relationship and the mind share with our sub agents? And you took a technology first approach. But then what's always struck me is that you've had a lot of back office focus as well, and the operational efficiencies, because a lot of your partners are not, Fortune 50 companies there. So your ability to help them deliver on that technology has been, really big differentiator. So just curious, where has your focus come in from both the technology side and then the operational side? And, that's been a big differentiator, in my opinion, from other master agencies. And curious about, how you got there, why you got there, and can we expect more of that, or where's MicroCorp headed?
Oh my God, there's a lot in that. Look, you're absolutely right. Soon after I got here, I said, look, some of these emerging technologies, our partner base is going to need help. So I think, one of the first sales engineers that we brought on was a UCaaS engineer, or as it was probably known back then more like VoIP. And when we've done engineering, it's typically to assist our partners migrate into these new areas rather than double down on existing business, because they tend to be experts.
Right.
And we did invest in that. And if I'm brutally honest, we didn't invest enough in the sales and marketing back in the day. Whereas our competition was investing more in sales and marketing, we were investing more on build it and they will come. Neither one of those is necessarily right. You need to do both. And if I look around at some of my competition, not so much now, but back in the day, it really was sort of big hat, no cattle sort of approach. We'll do all of this, but when you actually pull back the covers, not a lot really there.
Right.
So we've really invested a lot in really over the last 12, 18 months in building up our marketing team. And you're probably seeing a lot of stuff out there, particularly around the superheroes, etc. No, we've always had
superheroes.
Yeah. We've always had a big focus on back office. We do an enormous amount in the back office which is invisible to a lot of our partners, because they just get the experience. They don't really understand what we do in the back to enable that.
Right.
But with respect to order management, we do an enormous amount of order management, and our commissions is way ahead of anybody in the industry. Real-time auditing, as you go, exception reporting, loss reporting, churn reporting. We're really, really good at that because we own our own intellectual property, and we're able to develop that under Nautilus, now known as Eco Office. Which
is very interesting and very differentiating, that a lot of times goes unnoticed.
It does go unnoticed, but it's kind of like, if you start paying life insurance when you're 22 years old, you don't notice it until you need it. Our partners notice what we do when they have an issue. So when you put your hand up and say, we have an issue and we're able to resolve it because of everything we do in the back, we're able to do it expeditiously. Whereas maybe if we were doing that, you have to start from ground zero, and it takes forever to resolve an issue if you can. But I think really it's what happens next. So the whole thing about bringing on experts as we make this transition, you do some of that, and we will continue to do that. We just added Brian Funkhauser from Rackspace to help us with our managed service business under our cloud division, and Matt Sanders. And we have Donlan, as you know. But what we're building is something completely different. We are now living in the world where the channel is completely changing. As you were kind enough to point out, I've been in this business way too long earlier on. And I've seen, I was selling before the channel even existed. The channel got built up mostly through route switch, et cetera, et cetera. And we have MSPs, we have VARs, we have agents, we have ISVs, we have systems integrators, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
The channel is merging into one type of channel. So MSPs are becoming agents are becoming MSPs, et cetera. We see what's happening. And we got new entrants coming in, people who you never even thought of as being a channel, like a commercial real estate broker. A perfect channel. So the role of this new channel is very different. The role of that channel is to be a highly consultative advisor to their customer base. And I'm not talking about your traditional setup that you and I probably came through. Well, you're younger than me. I went through it, which was, I'm a solution salesman. Mr. Customer, tell me what your needs are and what your pain points are, and I have a solution that will solve your pain points. And we've all heard that 1,000 times. We're moving way beyond that. What we're moving to now is that customer doesn't even know what their pain points are. You've got to go in and consult with them to uncover what their pain points are. And that's true consulting, which has always been out of the reach of most customers. Unless you're a large enterprise, you can't bring in an IBM consulting, which is $100,000 for the first week. It's just not accessible to you. So in this world where everything's delivered from the cloud and it's the turn up time and you can consume it immediately, how do you get access to that? How do you know what you need? Well, you need someone who can consult with you. And that's what the new channel is. The new channel is a range of consultants. Then that's wrapped up with professional services. And then it's engaging an ecosystem behind you, because once you've uncovered what those needs are of the customer, how do you get them met? Well, those needs might be in the UCaaS world. They might be in your world. They might be in the SD-WAN world. They might be, but the needs are things like the needs aren't, I need an SD-WAN solution. The needs are, I need analytics about how my people are using the network remotely, et cetera, and I don't want to deal with any of it because I'm busy trying to develop applications to differentiate myself and manage the whole thing. Well, obviously that's your value prop.
Well,
but you've got to pull that out.
Well, you're hitting on you're exactly right. And we've had great conversations. I love talking market and shop. But what we've seen, and I 100% agree, that convergence that we're seeing between the conventional, agency model or agent, referral type source to an MSP, it's really coming into one, whether that's who wants to bill it or who wants to maintain that, tier one relationship. And as master agencies such as yourselves are able to deliver more value, I think it can only speed up the convergence even more. But what resonates so greatly with me is that, it's no longer that pain point sale where I think it was a consultancy where you can go in there and say, oh, you got a pain point with UCaaS? Well, I'll consult on that. Now it's who can become a value technology partner and stay with that relationship and then work through it like it's an outsourced function and get them all the different technologies that they need, knowing that the technology they need may be 3 years down the road. And I do think that that's where the master agency will become even more valuable, is maintaining all of that back end office, all those different technologies to enable those, consultants to become those value technology partners, because technology is changing so fast. So I just want to say, I completely agree. It's changed. And you've got a lot of really fantastic partners inside of your portfolio that are doing exactly that. So yeah, sorry, I didn't want to cut you off, but
no, that's okay. But your point's exactly right. And some of the things we're doing that we've announced and are actually out there now support that migration. So let's assume that this converged channel goes in and consults with customers, uncovers needs. Then you've got to meet those needs. But you can't meet all of those needs with a regular master agent line card, because those needs would require 1,000 different service providers one way or the other. And those needs might be, for example, I need to do a network assessment before I even put in my UCaaS.
Yep.
Well, who does that? Well, there's companies out there that do that. There's companies out there who do assessments. They do installations. They do all sorts of really cool things. And it would be great if my partners could have access to them through a marketplace. Well, that's what our EcoConnect program is all about. And we've launched Eco Hero. It's been out there since January, February. Eco Hero is a marketplace. It's where you can go and find those solutions, and we'll be adding more and more people to that. And we'll bring structure to that such that Eco Office, formerly known as Nautilus, the ecosystem, both providers and partners will have access to that so they can communicate, see status of things, check commissions. So we're going to enable this ecosystem so you can walk in, be a consultant to your customers, and then bring in a cavalry, which is brought together to you by MicroCorp in a structured and protected way. It's not the Wild West. There's contracts, there's commission administration, and the systems to make sure everybody's communicating.
I love that you're utilizing data more effectively and using that type of knowledge, both with the customer base, the sub-agents, and then leveraging kind of that eco place to bring it all together is fantastic. And I've said this, on this call, I'll say it, and I've said it, privately. I think it's the right thing, and it's extremely valuable. And I heard a stat before, and I don't know if it's correct or not, but one thing that resonated at one of the times I heard you speak was that your back end or your back office has a touch point of somewhere around 20 times per, implementation or account. And let me put it this way, as a over the top type play where, some of the value that we say is, look, if you want to work with, MicroCorp to bring in all those best in class technologies, that's awesome. And we're good at what we're good at, and we do what we're good at, right? That's great when I say that. But when you think about it from a customer standpoint, there are a lot of different touch points, and there's the project management function, and, there's a lot of value that's being created on the back end. Can you just explain to the audience some of the different things that your back end office is, or your back office is actually touching through those different, 10 to 20 touch points that you're doing?
Well, you're exactly right. I mean, bringing a solution in is one thing, and getting a customer to buy in the solution is fine, but then you need an implementation plan. And a lot of that we will do to help, but you also need an ecosystem to do more than that. So
right.
Understanding that whole value chain and what the role of MicroCorp or master agent is in that is vitally important. So we can't do the whole thing. And if we claim to do the whole thing, we're going to let a lot of people down, and that's not a good thing in terms of expectations.
Mm-hmm.
So things like we do not install, we do not do network assessments, like I said, we don't do network monitoring. That's not really what we're here for. That's what our channel should be doing. That's the value they can create themselves. We're not trying to steal from them. Network monitoring, right. If they want to do that, that's great. They can charge for it, make money out of it, etc. But our ecosystem will do it for them if they can't do it themselves. That's why the ecosystem, the EcoConnect program is so important. So we're not going to do it. If you can't or don't want to do it, I've got someone who will do it, and you can engage with them in a commercial way that makes sense. Having said that, there are things that we do. You're talking about the 20 touch points. That's really for order management. It's not actually 20, it's typically 12, but it varies by product. So,
okay, but who's counting?
But typically, we take it in an order, and we manage that order through various statuses and milestones right through test and turn up, when we hand it over to commissions, and that starts the commissions clock. And we're working with the providers all the way through that, because if it gets stuck in a particular status too long, then we will escalate with the provider to move it on to the next status, because that interval time's been excluded. So we literally, we do a very heavy touch on all the orders which come through. It varies according to what the product type is. And we'll also do project management on behalf of agents and partners. We can provide them with the information so they can do the project management, or we can completely get out the way, and well, they can get completely out of the way, and we do the whole thing for them with their partners. So, and that becomes particularly interesting when there's peak loads with agents. Agents load is typically not this. It's I win a deal, all this work to do it. Now I can't sell anything. Well, if I can offload that, which they can to us, then we can take care of that for them in a partnership, and they can carry on selling or doing other things. So we really are a back office for our agent partners, so they don't have to do it themselves. Commissions, for example, is another one. Look, our agents do business with multiple masters. It's sort of the way it's done and the way you have to do it. You have to spread your commission streams. That doesn't mean you can't have one person manage all your commissions. I can manage one of our partners' commissions, whether they do business with the guys on the West Coast, the guys in Utah, the guys in Chicago, or frankly, direct with a provider. I can manage all of it for them, even though they didn't put the business through us. So they don't need a commissions team. Well, they don't need a commissions person. That could save, even a moderate agent like $40,000 a year, rather than having to use a bookkeeper or something to muddle through and hopefully find some errors. Because believe it or not, master agents do make errors, and providers do make errors. But you're getting at and this is what I've really always valued, is that you, just like how I look at our company, you want to do what you're good at and stay focused on it.
and expand out of the core competency. You found the value in the technologist side of it, the operational efficiencies, because you believe that those, partners of yours, they're relationship people. And if you can keep them building those relationships, expanding, right? Landing and expanding with those relationships, and you offload as much as possible, then they're focused on what they are and you become more value to them. I do love, though, that you're able to do the commissioning side, even whether it's through MicroCorp or through, a competitor or direct with a service provider. But the touch points also on the PM side, that is a real value. And I'm not sure if, folks that are listening, truly understand that. But if you're working a deal and they've sold, let's say, UCaaS and SD-WAN and different types of transport and data backup restore, I mean, there could be 7, 10 different providers there, and each step could be on a different kind of phase. And a partner is trying to be out there finding the next opportunity, building the relationship. So having that, 12 touch points and what you're doing on the back end, I do think that is just a real differentiator and extremely valuable. And our team has seen that. So,
well, I think it's not just what you mentioned, people. It's not just people, it's also the relationship. So our relationship with Vergix is extraordinarily good and deep. And so it's that dovetailing of the relationship that enables us to give that seamless experience back to the partners. So it's where I go back to, it's systems and people. And we really do invest in our relationships heavily from a support perspective. And again, that's sort of behind the scenes. It's what we do. And that's a cost that we incur. I mean, it's not free to do, but we do that, and that's part of our value back to our partner base. Right.
Well, I always did like that you always put the partner first and said, we'll figure out kind of the business side of it, but let's get the relationship where it needs to be. And I know when we had our discussions, talking through our differentiating, MSP program and where you were at and what we were speaking about was, look, we have relationships. We don't want them to go elsewhere. And if you have those MSPs and they need to have that SD-WAN capability, let's bring it all together. And just tying back to what you said about the whole ecosystem, that was just another thing that even looking at our relationship, you said, well, how do we expand that? And you saw inside of your portfolio, well, there's a pain point, and we believe that the market's going to more of that MSP type model. How do we expand the relationship we had? And I think that that's a testament, though, to your leadership and what you're able to, accomplish there. But let me pivot a couple questions, okay? Because I could go all day speaking with you. But a couple things. I've been asking a lot of the folks, business leaders that I've spoken to, we're in a pandemic. It's a very trying time. You happen to be leading a technology company. And in addition to that, we've seen technology be a core component of how the world and businesses are operating now. Okay. But that's good. That's technology that's operating the business. As a business leader, though, how are you maintaining that culture inside of MicroCorp, knowing that you guys are very much that relationship type company? How have you maintained that while we're kind of remote? We're not having that interpersonal type interaction.
Well, there's two pieces to it. The first one is the technology itself enables that. Look, I'm a complete video digger. I was at Polycom for, 10 years. I ran R&D teams from the West Coast over to Israel and up in Denver. I mean, I was already doing video conferencing 7-8 hours a day back then. And I was a huge believer in how video technology could change the way we work. It would change the demographics of the world. We can now choose to be where we live versus where we work, et cetera. And it's an enormous driver of change. Now, it doesn't replace face-to-face meetings, but the technology's now got good enough so that you can actually maintain an intimate contact with your partners. And it's all about body language, high definition, eye contact, et cetera. So the technology has been there for forever. And the network capacity is out there to enable it, has been for some time. But what COVID has done is the pandemic it's been a catalyst to change. As many things might be possible, but there has to be a driver. That, necessity is the mother of invention, and that's what COVID has done for this technology. Hence, you've seen I think we're using Zoom now. I think we're allowed to say that. One of a number of really good platforms out there. Look at the multiples there, and I see some really exciting applications coming along, like Teams from MicroCorp, from Microsoft, which is great. So the technology has been there. The need is driving the adoption of it, and I'm actually having more contacts and conversations with partners and providers than I ever did before. That doesn't mean I don't want to stop and break bread with them and have face-to-face meetings and a whiteboard experience. So I do miss that, but we use it extensively internally. We use it extensively with our partners. The other piece of the technology that it enables is the whole online experience. And I said to our marketing team, our webinars need to be more entertaining than Netflix. Because everybody's at home with their cabin fever going on. Then when they come to a webinar, they want to be educated. So they don't want to learn to cook or taste wine, wherever. They actually want to come there for a reason, but it needs to be entertaining. And so we've been really upping our game with respect to providing that on an ongoing basis. Our upcoming one-on-one in November is going to be absolutely amazing. I mean, I haven't seen anything out there that looks like it. So people will come to it and go, oh my God, this is actually engaging. I'm not sitting there through yet another boring webinar. This is fun. I'd want to do this again, regardless of the content. So there's a whole online presence to be engaged with our partners that we're working on. But day to day, the whole conferencing technology is critical. And then, of course, what people don't understand is if you're doing a conference like this, all you're seeing is the iceberg above the water. What happens below the water to enable this experience to be great is incredible. Enter what you guys do. Yeah. The whole SD-WAN is critical to the future, and I love what you guys do from the managed version of it, because it makes it much more accessible to lots of people, including the MSP community.
Yeah, I agree. So, and by the way, on the one-on-one, are we going to see Chris Hubert get an actual Avenger to attend the event, or?
I'm not going to let any secrets out. We got a couple of really, really interesting speakers.
Awesome.
So I think they're going to be a good draw. The superheroes will feature heavily in what we do because they are funny. If you haven't seen the video, the latest one that came out with Paul Starkey, our marketing director, I can't stop watching it. It is so funny. People in the company who you never thought were funny before are the funniest. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But there's real things.
Superhero contest.
There's real things behind the superhero. I mean, it's fun, but it's real. We want to be the superhero of our partners, particularly in a time of enormous change. That's what we're committed to do.
Well, I love it, and you can see the shift in branding and the culture that's at least being pushed into the market. I've enjoyed the videos. Now, a couple more things. Well, I do have you. All right. You're a technology guy. What is a technology, or what type of technologies are you seeing that are just exciting you, or should we keep an eye on?
Well, it's obvious that network is becoming a commodity, increasingly. So if you're a partner, you've got to shift into some other areas. We've been saying it for years, but it's really happening now. And you really need to have a plan as a partner. So the obvious ones is a unified communications UCaaS biggie. People think, well, this has been around for years. I'm sure we've captured all the market. You've hardly started. I mean, the number of prem systems out there is extraordinary. So that puppy's there for a long time to run. But to be successful in that area, you need consistent delivery of network. Network is the new computer bus. It's the new backplane. It connects what's happening on-prem with where it's really happening in the cloud, whether that's UCaaS or other managed type services. And you need a reliable, secure, and predictable network connection, because it is the new computer bus. Well, what is that? Well, the fundamental piece of that is SD-WAN. SD-WAN is just critical.
Right.
And we're scratching the surface of that. And how that's delivered, whether it's do it yourself or through a managed service or through a provider, I mean, they all have their pros and cons. This is not the place to go. Yep. You can't ignore that. It's huge. And I also think with SD-WAN, people tend to look at it from the perspective of a good network connection, reliability with a couple of analytics. Really, I personally think it will move very quickly away from it'll become the norm for connectivity. But then the analytics it provided will start getting built into applications. So, if you're a pizza restaurant, you'll be able to tell whether your people are cruising on the web or serving customers. Pretty important stuff.
Right.
So I think the whole analytical area of SD-WAN is really important. Now with this connection, it's also got to be secure. And we're starting to see, unified security type offerings, cloud-based, which cover all aspects of security, which are accessible. The trouble with security to me in the past has always been it's been out of the reach of most companies and most partners. Starting with, let's start with a $40,000 network assessment as a minimum and then see where we go from there. And it's not really accessible.
Right.
And people have paid lip service to it a little bit. But I think, I'm sure everybody watching this video, particularly since COVID for some reason, it's like the personal attacks, the phishing that's going on. It's every day. I'm getting 5 or 6 emails where I'm going, really? So security is becoming a real issue that needs to be dealt with. So that's a massive area for people to get involved with. And that's very immediate.
One of the security is huge. That's one of our things. I mean, the product portfolio, but I was we had a behind the scenes with Kumar, founder of Versa. And what we talked about was, security integrated with SD-WAN. And as you know, we launched the home offering and then our VPN as a service, but it was all towards exactly what you're saying is that the network's changing, the branch is changing. Now it's at someone's home. You got these remote users, but security is a huge topic. So, Phil, I love our conversations. My last question: if you overheard the market speaking about you, what would you like to hear them say?
I'd like them to say, look, MicroCorp understands it's not just about systems, it's systems and people, and that's part of the experience. We are the partner of choice for migration. But I think also importantly, look, we're not trying to be Home Depot, the big box store. I mean, there's a place for that. We are more the Ace Hardware, if you like. We have scale, we're relevant, but we want to help you with it. When you walk into an Ace Hardware store, there's a guy there or a girl there who helps you understand how to solve your leak. You go into a big box store, they go, oh, is that plumbing or is that electric? We're not trying to be that. We want to be the Ace Hardware. And just choosing those brands, that's a really good example of what we want to be.
I love it. Well, for everybody that's listening, this was Phil Keenan, president of MicroCorp. Instead of becoming 007, he said, I'm going to go change the technology world. I'm extremely pleased and grateful to call you a friend and build the relationship. And we've had a really successful one. Thank you for joining me on Behind the Scenes. Again, this is Chris Chirico, joined by Phil Keenan, president of MicroCorp. If you don't know him, you should. Thank you.
That's great.